Good morning, everybody. We'll just give it another minute or two to allow folks to join us this morning. Thanks for being here. Did you have a question before we got started, Shannon?
Okay, there we go. No, the darn thing, when I zoom in here, the darn hand is already flying, so I can't figure it out. Anyway, I just lowered the hand. Oh, now it's back up again. What's that? There, I just lowered it.
Yeah, on our end, it shows that you're raised, so.
Ah, doggone it. What?
Here, Shannon, I can put your hand down for you.
Thanks, Leah.
No problem.
Now what does it say? Does it say my hand's up, lowered, or?
No hand now, Shannon.
Okay, so what it says here is that the hand is up, so I'll just leave it at that.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't get it, so.
Technology.
No.
Well, thanks for being here this morning, everybody. Again, I'm Mark Baltzell. I'm the statewide salmon and steelhead manager. With me this morning on screen, you'll see Dr. Derek Dapp from our modeling team and Dr. Kirsten Simonson from our Puget Sound Rec Fisheries manager. Welcome this morning. We're doing our third check-in from PFMC. It is Sunday morning, so unfortunately for this call, there has not been a whole lot of movement. We ran into some snags that I think we described yesterday morning with some of the ocean fisheries. So that really put another delay in the overall process as the kind of inside fisheries, the kind of the treaty troll fishery in the straits and all the inside fisheries have yet to make any moves. Because everybody's been waiting on the ocean fisheries to get settled. So what I'd like to do first thing this morning is just maybe let Derek walk through some of the things that we're considering. He can do a quick run through of kind of what the issue was in the ocean fisheries, and then a quick summary of some of the things we're considering. Really the main issue here is trying to get down to the 38% exploitation rate cap on Lower Columbia natural Chinook or Tules. So Derek, why don't you go right ahead and take it away and let everybody know what's been going on.
Thanks, Mark. And I'll just give this a moment to appear on screen now. Hopefully folks are seeing kind of the Chinook model outputs of where we're at currently coming up on screen. And as I'd spoken to yesterday, we are narrowed down to kind of a single ocean option at this point. What we're looking at in this set of model runs is that currently there's modeled a non-treaty ocean quota of 60,000 and a treaty quota of 40,000. In addition to that, kind of some of the Oregon changes. Oregon is similar to their Alt 1 that they had proposed in previous model runs. I don't want to dive too much into Puget Sound. We don't see any kind of real big changes here from what we've been looking at. But perhaps what I would call our attention to is down here, the Lower Columbia Natural Tule ER. When we're looking at this metric, we're targeting a management objective of 38% total exploitation rate. And currently out of this set of model runs, we're seeing 39.7. So that's a little bit above where we would need to be on that Lower Columbia Natural Tule ER. As Mark mentioned, we're looking at kind of a suite of changes that hopefully will go into the model runs today. And then we could look at tomorrow morning But that suite of model changes includes changes potentially in south of Falcon that we're looking at in terms of some of the Oregon fisheries, a reduction potentially in some of the non-treaty ocean quotas, and potentially some in-river Columbia River fishery changes that could help us to achieve those objectives in kind of one of the next set of model runs that we look at here. So that's kind of what we're thinking, and that's kind of where we're at with Chinook. Just want to maybe take a little bit of a pause there and see if there are any questions about where we're at currently in the modeling and what's to come.
Gabe has his hand up, I think, or he did.
Yep, he just raised his hand. Gabe, you can unmute.
Yeah, thank you. Derek, can you elaborate on what changes are being considered in the in-river fishery in the Columbia?
I can't elaborate on it too much right now, Gabe, just because that's still a little bit in flux. Like I said, we're looking at kind of a suite of changes, and kind of the exact changes that we make in regards to each of those pieces is still kind of being considered. But that's kind of what we're looking at currently. I will definitely have more information on kind of on that tomorrow morning.
Understood. Thank you.
It looks like Shannon also has his hand up. Shannon, you can unmute.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, so from that short discussion from Derek, it sounds like south of Falcon is an issue with the lower Tules. Do you know what kind of fish are intercepted in there as with regard to the weak situation in the lower Columbia Tules?
Thanks for that, Shannon. So as far as kind of those south of Falcon-based fisheries, relatively low impact on most of our Puget Sound stocks. But we do see, particularly in some of the central Oregon fisheries, and particularly actually central Oregon troll, although sport has some impacts too. We do see kind of a decent impact in both of those fisheries on Tules. And so that's kind of been one of the key sets of fisheries that we've been looking at as we've been kind of considering changes for Tules.
So how receptive is Oregon in changing the management of their fishery?
We've been in. Oh, sorry, Shannon.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've been in pretty close coordination with Oregon, and once again, all of these changes are still a little bit in flux. So there's kind of some moving pieces here, but from my understanding is we are looking at kind of changes made on all of the fronts that I'd mentioned to help us get there on Tules.
Okay, and then the last question is, do the macaw troll fleet, do they play into this Thule business?
So as far as kind of, there's kind of two separate pieces to that macaw troll. And in the summertime, in what we call time steps 2 and 3 in FRAM, that would be, first of all, May to June, and then July to September. There are Thule impacts. As far as kind of the winter troll piece that we often discuss in Puget Sound, we don't really see any Thule impacts in that fishery.
All right, thank you.
So maybe just for clarification for Shannon and for others on the call, what's been going on is essentially there's some real issues with the Klamath Chinook, and there's been a real effort between NOAA and California and Oregon to be real specific about those expectations for that return this year. And so really what's going on is Oregon's kind of pinched in between trying to manage for Klamath stocks south of Falcon, as well as lower Columbia natural Chinook. So they're really what they're trying to do is be able to craft their both sport and coastal troll fisheries to a point where they're essentially trying to keep an eye on both of those management objectives. So it's almost kind of like they're being pinched from the north and the south. So that's what everybody's been trying to work through, and why there's been such a delay on the ocean this week. It's really because of the south of Falcon impacts on the lower Columbia natural, and there's some separate modeling that goes on with the Klamath stock. So it's really been trying to just figure out those interactions with those models and how to shape that fishery so it's best represented in reality.
Yeah. One last comment on that.
Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, so, you know, the Klamath has got a history of taking too much water in the upper watershed. And this has been going on for years. And so I think that NOAA needs to step in and deal with the water in the upper watershed. There's been a lot of water feeding going on, as you all, if you're watching what's going on with the Klamath. I mean, all the conservation efforts are borne by fishers, but when you de-water the habitat up above, it's a pretty, it's like all the work is for nothing. So anyway, yeah, that's been studied. There was a guy from the University of Washington that did his master's thesis on the dewatering of the Klamath, and it was fairly enlightening. So I don't know if we're ever going to solve that problem. Thanks.
Thank you, Shannon. Our next hand is from Carl. Carl, you can unmute.
Wow, so sounds like you guys probably already get together with Oregon DNR and giving them some help on how to model fisheries, because it sounds like they could use it and get started a little sooner in the process maybe. But you know, with Puget Sound being last in line, this is you guys, I mean, you know, we're pulling our hair out. I can't imagine where you guys are at, but I guess my question is just, you know, when is this, you're supposed to present a package to the council? Is it like Tuesday or Wednesday?
If we're sticking to the schedule, Carl, salmon's supposed to be wrapped up by Tuesday.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope you guys have the opportunity to hammer out the wish, you know, what a realistic package of the wish lists is. That how have you had a chance to, I guess, is coho settled in the ocean now?
I settled maybe. The packages are linked. You know, that modeling and the guidance to the council happens at the same time for both Chinook and coho. Okay. So really, we think it's there on all our management objectives, but you know, again, everything moves forward as a package.
Well, I mean, while you're waiting for the ocean, are there discussions going on with Puget Sound tribes of what you're intending, or, you know, or ways to, and of course, one of the questions is, you know, how are they reacting to June in Area 10? Is there any chance of June 1st? Are they screaming no June fishery and we want July 1st? Or where are we at on that? Or has there been any discussion?
So I think folks may or may not remember me saying, you know, we had a regional discussion last week with the Puyallup and Muckleshoot tribe. We talked about June in Area 11 as well as 10. At that time, we got no indication. So I think there's some resistance to adding time back in June and 10, Carl, just to throw it out there. We've had preliminary discussions, but there's been not a lot of receptivity to that. We were able to, I think, you know, have preliminary comfort with adding that extra piece on in June and 11. We continue to have tribal discussions. We had a couple of good meetings yesterday with Tulalip, and there's, you know, some in-river issues that we're trying to deal with on the Skagit with the Summer Falls and those fisheries. There's some fishery shaping there that, you know, to get us above that lower bound threshold in the Skagit, or the lower abundance threshold in the Skagit. So, you know, discussions are ongoing this morning because we're all waiting kind of for the ocean to get settled out, we're diving right into chum fisheries and continuing those discussions with the co-managers. So, I mean, discussions are ongoing. We're just unable to make, real distinct progress on a fishing package until
All right.
it settles
Yeah, I
out.
understand. Thanks for the update, Mark. On the, I mean, are you guys expecting to hammer out this north of Falcon, south of Falcon mess by the end of today? You're hoping?
Yeah, I think what Derek indicated is I think there's the last little bits of kind of the side modeling or the looking at potential possibilities. There's still lots of hallway conversation and back and forth between Oregon and Washington and the river about what everybody can do to get us down to that 38% Thule rate.
Right.
So I think, as Derek indicated, hopefully sometime either late this morning or this afternoon, there's going to be some council guidance. We'll get a model assignment done today to get us down to that single ocean option. And hopefully by tomorrow, we can start making some progress on the inside fisheries.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for taking all the time to update us. The last question is going to be, the last couple of days, are you going to set up a phone tree or some way if there's some emergency, like decision making, or I know you guys might not have the time to consult with the advisors on any weird things that pop up, but that's the question.
I'll have Kirsten and Haley set something up today with the advisory group just to make sure that we're set up for instantaneous communication if we need it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carl. And our next hand is from Tom. Tom, you can unmute.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. On Friday, you sent out alternative proposal scenarios for our Puget Sound opportunity. And I would ask you guys to edit scenario 1 to what the expectation was following the second North Falcon call. We had a 70% response to the poll in the Area 9 expected start. You continue to have it on July 16th. I know we talked about that being on the 14th. I realize it's a bookkeeping thing, but I would like to see that in writing from the department. You've alluded to the fact that you may not have a great deal of time. I just want to make sure the clear ask of scenario 1 would be that July 16th date in Area 9. I'd like to see that in writing, and I'd like to see it on an updated proposed scenario. In addition to that same proposed scenario 1, given the recent inputs from WCBI, we realize we're not going to get an Area 7 winner, but I think it's a fair ask to have an Area 7 expected start of August 1st. So perhaps we could see a scenario 1 in the proposed scenarios to have Area 9 as July 14th and Area 7 as August 1st. Do you see a problem getting that done, at least as a proposal?
So, Tom, I know you weren't on yesterday and probably didn't get the message, but what we said yesterday morning on the phone was that our proposal going forward is simultaneous openings in 7 and 9 starting July 14th. And we're going to run 3 days. The proposal on the table is 3-day season starting July 14th. So we'll do that basically through July, see how far we can get on Chinook, and then turn the switch to coho retention in August. So I think for 7, we're looking at August 15th, and 9, we're looking at August 1st.
So, okay, I must not have followed you, because I heard you say first simultaneous seasons, and then you just gave me different dates. So are you proposing for 7 and 9 on the 14th for Chinook on July 14th? Correct.
That's the proposal going forward.
Okay.
And then we'll just manage those quota levels in season. We'll run Chinook as long as we have quota for 3-day seasons. And then August 1st will open for coho and 9, and August 15th will open for coho and 7.
Okay. All right. I'll follow you. Can we see that in writing? Can we see that as one of the alternative proposals? Because it's kind of confusing, and you're correct, Mark, and I apologize for not being able to attend the meeting yesterday. I had a work conflict. But if we could see these, in writing, make sure that's what the ask is going to be from the department. Thank you very much. And I'll put my hand back down and shut up. Thank you.
No problem, Tom. We all have other work to do, so no big deal.
And our next hand is from Pat.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about a few things. One is, I was hoping that we would get down to some specifics about season discussions that haven't been recorded. Or Mark, I got all of your message there about the frustrations, or maybe you guys are stuffing your frustrations. You're not really frustrated, but you're not showing it much. But it's north of Falcon last week, and I get it. So, but some of the details we haven't talked about. One is, I wonder if we could have a little bit of discussion about opportunities for sport in marine waters for chum. Is there any consideration for that in places in Central Sound and South Sound? Is there any consideration for that expanded over last year's very conservative? Can you compare it? Just tell us what's in the package from your thinking. And then I had a couple other questions that I'd like to follow that up with too, please. Thanks.
So, yeah, I mean, currently, Pat, there's nothing that we've had in discussions or proposals about limiting the sport retention of chum this year. So I think we have a little bit better forecast, not great, but so far we haven't had any discussions about limiting, and this as well as anybody, Pat, those both marine area and even the terminal freshwater opportunities in South Sound, they're not high impact. So we, I think, at this point, the differences from last year are we're not kind of out the gate proposing recreational chum closures. So those aren't on the table this year.
Oh, good. And thanks, Mark. And if there were some details on that, like I think particularly we would have expected that, or we do expect that if there's a coho fishery open, that there's allowable retention of chum. But then if there are some, in some of the discussions that constrain coho to a shorter season, but you're right in the middle of the chum run, and here's the classic issue of conflict of, or perceived conflict, whatever, that the commercial fishery for non-Indians is open and there's a closure, no sport fishery open for salmon, including chum. And it, I'm not sure if that's a case that you could see this year, but if it was, I think it'd be good to have a bit of discussion with folks about that, because I think it's very, like you say, agree, it's very small impact, but it needs to be planned. I'll leave that alone then. Another question that I have is about the Chinook quotas that are associated with a proposal. And I talked the other day, it was a couple meetings ago, about with Derek, primarily about the calculation of total allowable harvest. And I said that I would get back to you in something that laid that out more clearly rather than just talking about it on a Zoom meeting. And so I just sent out a quick summary of what I see, and we don't need to have it right now, the discussion, but if you could, Derek in particular, you could take a look at that and what am I missing, and I think it's essentially this issue about catch matching or impact matching between tribal and non-tribal, and a calculation of allowable harvests using the 9% for natural and 14% for hatchery. I think it seems pretty straightforward, and I still see that it's higher than the levels that were associated with the scenarios that Derek, that you presented and provided for us. So I'd just like to understand it a bit better, and if we're not ready for it now, maybe we could have a discussion at tomorrow or at a future time, or even by exchanging on email messages. And I think the reason why I'm pursuing that is I really wonder if there isn't an ability to have slightly higher quotas, but I don't know quite for sure what the quotas are. You mentioned that in yesterday's discussion that something about quotas like in Area 9 that are approximately equivalent to last year. And I wonder what you're thinking that is there, what's limiting it to the levels that you're proposing. It seems like there's a bit more room than the scenarios that you're presenting, but that's just from my view. Okay, well, that's enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. I did see that I had an email come through from you. I'll look at the document that you provided and get with the team to discuss.
Our next hand is from Shannon. Shannon, you can unmute.
Yeah, thanks. I guess this question would be for Mark. Now, August 15th is going to be the peak of the sockeye run headed for the Fraser, and as you well know, there's going to be effort. We get to fish sockeyes about every fourth year now, and so we need to consider gear conflicts at salmon banks. That's where you're going to be fishing Chinook, is that correct? August 15th, 3 days a week?
No, we will not be fishing Chinook on August 15th, Shannon. It'll be coho only in the San Juans.
Okay, so I guess it still remains the same that once again, you need to think about gear conflict. If you stage the non-treaty guys on the weekend, I suspect there's going to be quite a bit of nets run over. So just think about that. And then the other thing, same thing at Point Roberts. So then the other thing, you had a short little mention about Tulalip, that you had some meaningful discussions with the Tulalips. Is that correct? Okay. Yep. So then was that about the coho run headed there?
Well, we talked about both summer, fall, Chinook and coho.
Okay. So my question there, well, my first comment was, is that last year 60,000 pieces of coho was harvested inside the Tulalip bubble, and at some point in time, I think the non-treaty guys, commercials, still want to fish in that bubble. So I hope that the department is thinking about how to work that out. That's a pretty small area, Mark. Okay.
Well, the problem there, Shannon, is that we opened it for a bunch of years and saw no effort. And so remembering where the policy priorities are for species, and given the where we've been at for low coho returns to the basin for Snohomish, and having coho be a sport priority, we prioritize whatever we can squeeze for a sport fishery out of that area, and have basically taken the commercial fishery off the water, just to basically make sure that we get whatever we can out of that.
Well, okay, I guess the point is, Mark, that our commercial fishery is just about dead in Puget Sound. And for 2 or 3 years in a row, I asked the department to give us a cap on the fish there, 400 or 500, something that the guys can at least the Everett guys can go down and try to fish there on that shoreline. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Shannon. Our next hand is from Bob. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Since my friend Pat Patillo brought up Chum, South Sound, I thought maybe I'd continue that discussion. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like same old, kind of sitting around waiting in north of Falcon. I really miss being in the caucus room. But yeah, any discussions with the South Sound tribes? You mentioned you had meetings with Muckleshoot and Puyallup. Any discussions about what the trigger would be, or any change from last year in terms of a run size that would need to be seen or agreed to before we could prosecute fisheries in South Sound?
Thanks for being here, Mr. Kehoe. If you could hold your question for the next 3 hours and 15 minutes, we have a South Sound Chum meeting scheduled for 9 o'clock this morning, where we're hoping to discuss that trigger and what that looks like to see if we can't get agreement heading into trying to basically scratch that one off the list of things to try to accomplish here at this meeting. So we'll be sure David Quasi and Mickey are here. We'll make sure that we get a note out to folks if there's anything resolved after today.
Okay, and then just a quick question on the process and procedures this year. I mean, so PFMC is going on, right, down there. So you've got, I assume, some people in person. What about your negotiations with tribes? Is that all face to face, or is it combination Zoom, or kind of what's the logistics and dynamic there this year?
Yeah, so we've probably got about 15 staff from the department here, which is, for folks who have been around, for a while, that's a much reduced kind of staff load from our end. We left all our district bios and those staff back at home. So with the tribes, there's been quite a few tribes that are here in person that we've been able to meet with. But as these things go, and because we've been so delayed out in the ocean, there's been some tribal engagement, as I've talked about, but not a ton. And it's basically a mix of in-person and hybrid. The Fish Commission did they invested in a kind of a virtual meeting setup that they've been employing in the meetings throughout the spring. And so we're using that and then our technologies as well, that we're able to kind of bring people in as needed virtually to those people who aren't here in person.
Okay, thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks, Bob.
And our next hand is from Gabe. Gabe, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Has there been any discussion with the Quinault tribe about the recent commission decision to give the department flexibility with that 5% cap on the Chehalis?
So as other things, Gabe, we've been waiting for representatives from the Quinault Nation to arrive. I believe they arrived late yesterday. So our intention would be to engage those co-managers today about that fishery. We did gain flexibility about going above the 5%. So we've got a number of different things that we're trying to work through. We've received a preliminary fishing schedule from the nation, and we're working through that and hope to engage them in discussion later today.
Great, thank you.
And our next hand is from Tom. Tom, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Mark, you mentioned that you did have discussions with Tulalip and they were somewhat productive. Could you shed any light on a proposed recreational opener in Tulalip Bay? And then are the Tulalips anticipating their traditional May 1st gill net opener in and around the bay, and how and I was concerned about the impacts on stilly of that fishery that occurs in May and June around Tulalip Bay. Any light you can shed on that for us?
Yeah, I mean, if, right now, Tom, as it sits proposed, the kind of the traditional recreational fishery in and around the bay is on the table, and there's been no indications that needs to be altered. Other than, folks may remember last year, we did have to do an in-season closure just because of some of the broodstock needs. We were actually collecting fish at that facility. Don't know if we're going to need to do that this year, but it is kind of something we'll be watching, hopefully not have to take any action. What was the other part of the question?
As far as the
sorry.
traditional May 1st gillnet opener and the number of stilly impacts that get racked up on that, I just kind of wondered what was the tenor of those discussions with respect to the stilly hatchery problem.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tom. So you're right. If we look at where those impacts are on Stillaguamish, I think on the treaty side, the bay fishery is one of the next biggest ones after kind of the treaty troll. And so really as those fisheries get shaped, we expect that the tribal side will just shape their fisheries to get down to kind of half that unmarked impact. And I'm sure that'll include some fishery shaping on the Tulalip side in and around the bay to get down to the number on the tribal side.
Thank you.
And our next hand is from Norm. Norm, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm using a different device. I didn't feel like being shut down again today, like I shut myself yesterday. Did I hear someone mention that the commission decided to lift that 5% cap down in Grace Harbor?
They did, Norm.
Thank you.
And that was our last hand for right now. So just to remind folks, if you're on the phone, *9 to raise your hand. Otherwise, you can find it under the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen. Might be a little smiley face. And Pat has his hand back up.
Oh, that was a good comment. Yeah, that was. I wanted to encourage some of the other advisors. It seems like there's only about 4 advisors that are Puget Sound sport advisors that are doing any providing the discussion. I really encourage people like new advisors to ask questions, even if you think they're kind of they might not be, you're not very confident about them, or you might think it's a dumb question. It probably is not. There's just it seems like there's too little conversation here. Now you don't have very much time, Mark and company, but I'll ask just one more question, and this is because Mark, we had this quick discussion. I asked Derek the other day, was it yesterday? No, it was a couple times ago that, and you weren't there. The scenarios that we had provided to us on our website has all of the scenarios were closed for the winter in Area 7. And I asked Derek, in your absence, what are we? Is it off the table? Is the winter fishery gone? And I think Derek said that no, it's still on the table. I know that's what he said, but any more discussion about that, Mark? Is it alive, even at a very small level? Please inform us. Just a little bit of a discussion on that. Thanks.
So Pat, I think as you know, we're really in a tight spot when it comes to Stillaguamish impacts, and I know I've said it 100 times, but those Stillaguamish impacts in winter fisheries, particularly in 7 and 9, are really expensive. And I think we've been hearing a lot about summer directed priority on Chinook in Area 7 and a lot of different areas. And I think as we're trying to sit here and balance these things and think about opportunities that, I think, the feedback that we've heard and kind of where we've centered the proposal is around, the more robust directed opportunity in the summer. I think as we're thinking about it, if we're trying to fit that into the package, there's going to be a number of other areas and fisheries that are going to have to be shaped in a different way to try to make room for those Stillaguamish impacts. So I think as we're thinking about the package that moves forward, it's probably not on the table. I think as we've been trying to make room for all these opportunities and trying to prioritize them with you and with others, that's one that just because of how expensive it is and when it occurs, it just kind of makes the most sense for trying to remove that consideration as we move this forward. So I think if we had heard a different tone from Area 7 anglers about a winter priority over a summer priority, then that may be something that we could consider. I know one of the things we looked at was, kind of an August and September marine area opportunity, and then, some directed Chinook in the winter. But again, we heard quite a bit of feedback about really wanting that summer opportunity. So to directly answer your question, I think as we're considering what to move forward, it's not on the table.
Well, Mark, I appreciate you being direct. I think that's important. I wouldn't want people to have an impression that something's alive, and I, for one, had spoken in favor of even a very, very limited fishery, as you know, and still think that there's an issue, a broader issue. This is just an example of allocating between our diverse interests, and I think that priority is different than exclusivity, and in general, that's an application, in my view, of the policy of that the commission has for trying to have some opportunity in as much as possible in everywhere across areas, across times, and the loss of winter fishing is a hard hit for a lot of people, and so something very small. If there's any possibility in the end here of the decision to have even the, as I've called it, postage stamp winter fishery, just to keep it alive, or to let people know that it still is a valued fishery. It may not compete with a lot of people's time, but it's a by definition, it's a winter fishery. It's one that is not participated by everybody, but it has value. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Pat. Looks like our next hand is from Zachary. You can unmute yourself.
Hey guys, can you hear me? I'm also on a different device today.
We got you, Zachary.
All right. Just a quick question. I don't work as hard as you guys. I slept in a little bit this morning. Will this meeting or recording of this be posted anywhere online so I can go review the first 10 minutes?
So we are recording it. Sorry, I should have made that clear from the beginning. I'm not sure who's working today to get it up online. There is a possibility that I guess maybe if you had a specific question about the first 10 minutes, Zachary, what we really went over in the first 10 minutes was just talking about how we've been delayed with setting an ocean fishery package. That's still not ready and moving forward quite yet to allow us to make moves on the inside fisheries yet. So
okay,
that's what we went over in the first part of the meeting.
Yeah, then I'm fine. I don't have any major burning things, and you guys should focus on fisheries more than posting stuff on YouTube, and as I'm sure you know. So thank you guys, appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And I just got a chat message from one of our public affairs folks that said it'll be posted today.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Zachary. Our next hand is from Tom. Tom, you can unmute.
Okay, last thing I'll just to kind of pick up on what Pat was indicating with regard to the value of winter fisheries and kind of wrapping that into the whole one fish, two fish limit thing. I honestly think for the foreseeable future, we should only consider one fish Chinook limits. We see what happened in CQ. We kind of had a struggle communicating that concept during the Area 10 fishery that we recently had. And I honestly feel that if we would have had a one fish limit in CQ, for instance, that we wouldn't have had that closure. And I mean, that's kind of the only game in town out there in Clallam Bay and CQ for Van Ripers and Masons. And you know, we need to look at that and maintain that. And the longer it goes, you know, the better opportunity these guys have to make an economic go of what is an important part of that local economy. So again, moving forward and looking at this Area 5 opportunity, you know, running in March and April next year, I really think we got to start that off at one fish and then leave the option to go to two. Similarly in 10, I think that's a viable strategy that maybe later in the season then we go to two. But starting off at one fish, I think it's a prudent way to expand these seasons because time on the water is much more important than another fish in the freezer.
Thanks, Tom.
And it looks like Norm has his hand back up. Norm, you can unmute.
Yeah, Mark, the follow on what Tom was just saying, and Pat, earlier in the year, I heard us mention something about looking at size limits on the fish. Has there been any further discussion internally about that?
We have, so direct answer, Norm, we haven't had those discussions for this year's fishing package. Those are discussions that we have around a number of different things, specifically around winter fisheries. We've had a lot of discussion around winter fisheries. You know, one of the big things for the tribes has been kind of the encounter rates on sublegals during those winter fisheries. So, you know, there's lots of different thoughts there about, you know, lowering a size limit or eliminating a size limit to try to reduce those encounters limits. You know, I think the reality here is that for the future, we're going to have to think about managing to kind of total mortality, right? That's really what we're centering on here, is trying to make sure that we're staying within kind of what we predict for a total mortality, especially on Stillaguamish stocks, because of kind of what we're agreeing to for the future as part of the RMP and a conservation payback. So I think really as we're thinking about crafting and managing these fisheries, that's how I'm thinking about it, at least, is we're not only going to have to keep track of the retention time periods, we're going to have to make sure we're on top of the non-retention time periods too. So different ways of thinking about stuff, but you know, size limits have not really been part of the discussion for this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Our next hand is from Alex. You can unmute.
Good morning, everyone. Derek, can you tell us where we're at on the stilly mortalities right now?
Stand by, Alex. Had to happen at least once. I'm sorry, guys. So currently on the stilly mortalities, we're currently at, in the current set of model runs coming out, we're at 75.8. And go ahead. And I'm anticipating that kind of by the end of the process that I would expect that number to drop somewhere between 64 and 66, maybe 63 and 60.
How? Like, how do you expect that number to drop?
Well, there are a whole bunch of different ways that we could potentially skin the cat here. But what I would encourage is we had produced for yesterday's meeting, we looked at kind of a range of different scenarios as to how we might meet our Stillaguamish objectives and get down on some of those mortalities. If you haven't seen those, Alex, I think those are available on publicly on our website. I'm seeing Mark shaking his head up and down, yes.
They're available on the Puget Sound Recreational Advisory Group webpage on the website.
Of the various
The different
scenarios.
Derek went through, yes.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make a general comment that I believe that both Dr. Dapp and Dr. Simonson are very respected in their fields, and you guys put a lot of work into your modeling and the science that you put behind this. And I don't think that should be discredited whatsoever. But I will say from an angler standpoint that we are having successful catch rates, and we have been for the last several years. That in some way should be reflected in our preseason forecasts. I feel that with the amount of emergency rule changes and closures and fisheries that have been removed from our opportunities, that as a whole, we should be considering the fact that if we're being successful, then it may be because there's a strong indication that there are more fish, and our preseason forecasts could be on the short end. And so I know at this point in the process where we can't go back, I just would like to make sure that I make a public statement that we are being successful because what we believe is there is more fish than what's being forecasted. So I appreciate everything. We will hear from you guys tomorrow morning.
Thanks, Alex.
Just a heads up for everybody, I just put a link for that that scenario page in the chat, so you guys should all be able to find that easily.
Thank you, Kirsten. Our next hand is from Kurt. You can unmute yourself.
Morning, guys. It was good to hear that things haven't changed much. Fish still need water, and north of Falcon is still a cluster. You mentioned, Mark, that there was some discussions on the Skagit in-river fishery. I'm assuming that's a tribal net fishery, but I want to check to make sure that's the case.
Yeah, there's, not to air anybody's dirty laundry, there's just some intertribal differences of opinion about allocation and fisheries that we're just trying to work through.
I assumed it was a normal situation, but in the past, there's been some collateral damage, so I thought I'd just ask. In terms of the Still-Guami Chinook, sooner or later, if we want to craft more opportunities or diverse opportunities, we're going to have to discuss Marine Area 5. I think that's one of the big hitters for probably one of the 2 or 3 biggest hitters on Still-Guamish impacts. Maybe Derek can correct me if I'm wrong, but where we are, go from anywhere we are now is pretty painful. And especially with this conservation payback, we can't afford to go over very much because we have very little wiggle room. If we went over a couple 3/10 this year, we would be really painful paying that back next year. In the future, we can't do it for this year, but it might be interesting to look at summer and winter days of recreation produced by Still-Guamish impact, one fish impact, how many days we can produce in various areas in various times of the year. So we can really measure exactly, discuss meaningfully what the, how to maximize the benefits from those impacts, and just something that we probably need more information on going into the future, because I don't think the Still-Guamish question is going away anytime soon. And thanks for what you're doing.
Thanks, Kurt.
And that looks like our last hand for right now. Just a reminder, *9 if you're on the phone, and the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen if you're having a hard time finding the button.
So just want to thank everybody for taking the time to be with us again this morning. I wish we had kind of more season stuff to lay on the table and talk through. But I appreciate everybody's patience and understanding as we try to work through these issues here at the council meeting. Really, I think we learned last year and this year, when those ocean fisheries are not settled, it makes the process harder and pushes everything into a tighter window here for both the Columbia River fisheries and inside Puget Sound fishery. So our goal for today is to continue our tribal discussions, hopefully get some modeling done and get some fishery changes in a co-manager package. Guessing that may not happen today, but hopefully we'll get it going early tomorrow morning and be able to have some modeling to look at. We do, as I mentioned, we do have a chum meeting this morning with the co-managers. And then I'm not sure what other meetings we have scheduled for today. Other than I think we're going to try to get together with the Quinault Nation, as I said earlier, about the Grace Harbor fishery. The other one that we're working on, we have yet to have a discussion with Hood Canal co-managers this year. We've had some technical meetings, but we have yet to have a policy discussion for Hood Canal. Number of things we have to touch base on and start to work through, including the overfish status for Hood Canal Natural Coho that came out of the council process this year, and how we're going to start addressing that going forward. So the work continues as we move through our weekend here, but again, appreciate everybody's time. And as I said, we'll start an outreach tree to the advisory group today, just in case we need to get folks together. And other than that, we'll be back here tomorrow morning to update everybody on what's going on. So thanks again for being here, and we'll talk to you soon.